Okay, I'm going to share the screen now.
Okay,
Okay.
righty here. I'm just going to welcome you. So my name's Helen McIntosh, and I'm the president of the South East London Chamber of Commerce. And we're absolutely thrilled to have with us today Dr. Najib Altawel, who lectures and is an expert researcher on he leads his lecture on the BSc in Energy Management at Coventry University, London, and they have a campus at Greenwich Peninsula. So questions at the end, and I hand over to Najib.
Thank you. This particular lecture, as I mentioned earlier on, is quite a big subject, as all of you are aware. The title of the lecture here is How Climate Change Might Impact on Your Business. So the way we're going to start about it, we're going to look at the causes of climate change and global warming. And then we look at the connection with the business with the climate change and the global warming. And then we look at briefly at regulation and government connection to climate change and global warming. So if I ask the first question, what the causes actually of climate change and global warming, if I could put the following slide, what are the causes of climate change and global warming? I mean, it's been in the news for many years now, and the idea of climate change, global warming started from the early 1970s, actually, but from the scientific approach, but nothing been taken seriously during that time. It's only recently, within the last 20 years or so, that we start to see the effect of climate change and global warming on our daily life. So let's look at the causes for it. And we look at, there are so many different causes for climate change and global warming. We could say there are man-made causes. There are within the planet Earth or beyond the planet Earth or global natural phenomena, or maybe even certain businesses using it for marketing purposes. Whether they agree with it or not, that's a different matter. But you can see actually from the slide that water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and ozone. You can see the image itself that when the heat from the sun coming and penetrate the atmosphere, in normal circumstances, part of this heat should reflect it back into outer space. But what is happening now when we're burning fossil fuel, we have heavy gases which uh, become close to the surface of the Earth. It means the heat in itself, it cannot escape outside the Earth and accumulate it. It's like a greenhouse gas or sauna bath. If you go Turkish sauna bath, actually in the same way it works, that the heat accumulated decade after decade and so on, and the temperature rise and rise, and that means we will not have season, will affect our life. The North Pole and the South Pole will be melting, and so on. We'll come to that. We explain that how that's going. So there are many possible causes. These are divided into natural phenomena and man-made causes. We will look at the man-made causes, and then I will look briefly at the natural phenomena for that. Okay, the following slide. So if we go back in geological time, and how the Earth actually, the atmosphere of the Earth was before human existed, the concentration of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere around close to 99%. And how the evolution started later on, we have microorganisms at that time that start to absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to build their body. And then layer after layer of these dead microorganisms under high pressure and so on, it produce what we call fossil fuel, crude oil for that. And what we're doing actually at the present time, we're reversing that process. What nature did actually taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to open the way to the evolution to take place for a human to exist, we are reversing that process. We are releasing, we're taking this fossil fuel from outside the earth, where it contains high percentage of carbon dioxide, and releasing it into the atmosphere. So exactly the reverse of what nature did. And that's what's happening now. And the future, actually, if this continue, this burning fossil fuel, a human existence on this planet Earth will not be possible. And we look at why this possibility may happen. So what was the percentage of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere before the Industrial Revolution? We're talking about the Industrial Revolution here. The Industrial Revolution, we're talking about there was 45% less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than at the present time. And we look at it here. These are the microorganisms. Plankton help to reduce carbon dioxide from the Earth. And the concentration we're talking about of carbon dioxide, as I mentioned earlier on, between 40 to 45% lower before the Industrial Revolution than after the Industrial Revolution. What does that mean? It means that what we taken from inside the Earth and burning it, i.e., releasing carbon dioxide and releasing other greenhouse gases, methane as well, it's going to change the whole process of life actually on the planet Earth. And we have IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which is under the umbrella of the United Nations. They have their own website, and they could check actually on monthly basis. They provide a report about what's happening to climate change and global warming. You could access their website on the internet. Say the IPCC warned that fossil fuel emission must be half within 11 years if global warming is to be limited to 1.5 degrees centigrade above a pre-industrial revolution. These are scientists specialized in this field, and simply they are doing research on regular basis to find what kind of solution actually needed and advise government accordingly. This is the planet Venus in front of you. The planet Venus has the same size as the planet Earth, and it has an atmosphere. But you can see that the temperature, the average temperature on the planet Venus is 465 degrees centigrade. It means you find lake of metal. It may rain metal, actually, for that matter, and life is impossible there. Now, from geological point of view, an astronomer, the planet Venus wasn't like that over a million of years ago. It was a kind of different case. Now, accumulation of carbon dioxide within the atmosphere of the planet Venus rise the temperature at a high level, and that could happen actually to the Earth in the same way as it happened to the planet Venus. So releasing greenhouse gases continuously may change the Earth's climate, possibly to become similar to the climate on the planet Venus. So the sharp rising of CO2 in the atmosphere, together with other greenhouse gases, would form thick blanket, as we said, around the Earth, trapping the heat further, as well as changing the pattern of the climate drastically. And if we change the climate drastically, I mean, we mentioned earlier on about the season. If the season disappear, I mean, life will be almost, it has to change completely from the way we know it. And here's some of the older graph, actually. We have a graph showing the temperature, rising the temperature from the 19th century up to the year 2000. You can see the rising of the temperature on a smaller scale, but this is smaller scale. It has a huge impact actually on microorganisms as well as other kind of organism as well as a plant. So we're talking about here by the year 2000, it reached about 0.45 degrees centigrade rising. If you look at the other graph beside it, you can see the black graph, and this is the total of carbon dioxide emission rising quite high, actually, up to the year 2050. We see that the emission per year in billion of metric ton of carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere. There are many different industries as well, but this has been accumulated as one way, despite the fact that we, at the present time, there are certain regulations, there are also the development of renewable energy, and as well as there's some political activity taking place, trying actually to minimize the emission of carbon dioxide. But it seemed to me it's a bit too little and too late, actually, for that. This had been done from the last century, actually, when the scientists warned, actually, the rising of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as early as 1970 or earlier than that, where the idea that we are facing, actually, a climate change and a global warming as a result of burning fossil fuel. So where is carbon dioxide coming from? You can see that electricity and heat production, these are estimated around 35 to 36% emitting carbon dioxide. We have also transportation between 24 to 26% emitting these greenhouse gases, manufacturing industry and construction around 22%, other sector 14%, and we have also such as refinery emitting around 5% carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So the most important one we're talking about here is the first three. These are the power station, transportation, and manufacturing industry. They are the highest emitter of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's what we talked about so far. We talked about man-made. Okay, so what it means man-made? It means the burning of fossil fuel. We're taking crude oil or coal or green natural gas and burning that into, and then we're releasing greenhouse gases, and that's what changes actually the climate. There are natural causes as well, which we cannot do much about it. These, for example, solar variation. Every 11 years, the activity, the nuclear activity in the sun, a change, and you could notice a more black spot on the surface of the sun, and it means a toxic radiation coming from the sun and may hit the earth and may change the climate. Obviously, we have the magnetic field, which will prevent that from happening, and therefore, only we have the effect maybe on the North Pole or the South Pole, where the magnetic field slightly become weaker at that at these 2 points. The other part as well, we have volcanoes. The eruption of volcano releases a large amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but the volcano itself has two sides for it. Now, volcano emit greenhouse gases, as we said, but large volcano may emit also a huge amount of dust into the atmosphere, very fine dust into the atmosphere, which means prevent the heat coming to the earth. So it has two opposite effects in this way. As the temperature rise caused by the climate change, we may have in the future supervolcano. Supervolcano, it means emitting of far more greenhouse gases, as well at the same time, much more dust coming into the atmosphere. The other aspect for natural causes for climate change is the axis of the Earth. The Earth rotates around its axis around an angle of 23.5 degrees and can shift toward the sun by this angle. And then that would have impact on the atmosphere. And then as it rotates or wobble around this axis by 20 feet, go to the other side, and it shifted itself slightly away from the sun, and that will have impact as well into the atmosphere. We also have the orbit of the Earth. The orbit of the Earth, it go around the sun, and this orbit change from time to time. As the orbit gets wider, obviously we're going far away from the sun, and we might have an ice age, or maybe it gets smaller, actually, closer to the sun, and the temperature rise drastically as a result of this change of the orbit of the Earth. We also have another aspect, toxic radiation from the center of the galaxy, Milky Way. You may remember, actually, some of you, that in the year 2012, on the 21st of December, the world will end at that time. They were talking about it in many different articles there were, and people talking about it. And the reason actually for that, two different group of people talking about it. One group that they're talking about the Aztec civilization, which they were very advanced civilization at that time, and their calendar ended on that particular date. And they thought that this Aztec civilization knew that the world will end on the 21st of December 2012, but also some scientists believe that from the center of the galaxy, on that particular year, we are protected by star constellation that will hit the Earth if this star constellation, as the Earth going up and down actually within the Milky Way, and therefore will be exposed to these toxic radiation, and it will wipe out actually everything from the Earth. This didn't happen, obviously. These prediction before 2012, when people predicted at that time. We also have another natural phenomena which may have impact as well on the on the atmosphere, and this is the Earth magnetic field. The Earth magnetic field protects the Earth actually from the sun radiation. It's just like an onion shield, but the magnetic field, it can change. The North Pole become the South Pole, and the South Pole become the North Pole. And during this process, when this changing takes place, the magnetic field will not protect the Earth. It becomes messy in this way, and therefore radiation will hit the Earth and have a direct impact on the atmosphere. Now, all these natural phenomena, as I said, we cannot do much about it, but it doesn't happen. It happened over a long period of time, and therefore compare what we're doing at the present time, burning the fossil fuel. The burning fossil fuel is happening at a very short time compared with the natural phenomena for that. Okay, now we talked about the climate change globally, the causes for it. We mentioned the man-made, and we mentioned obviously the natural phenomena for that. Now let's look at the impact actually on the economic growth and businesses as a result of climate change and global warming. Uh, Most of the researchers predicted there will be winner and loser actually from the change in the climate. Winner, for example, we're talking about there will be new opportunity, a new development take place in the manufacturing industry to meet this kind of changes into the atmosphere and a rising temperature, but also there will be losers as well. We're talking particularly agriculture, for example, and other manufacturing industry may lose their opportunity or the loss of land and so on. That will affect these businesses. So climate change, it could risk an opportunity for to businesses through changes in demand for existing and new product and services for that. But on the long term, on the long run, the negative impact is much higher actually than what we're talking about. Some of these winning will take place as a result of changing of the climate. Obviously, certain area of agricultural land in colder area will be viable for agriculture, which is not viable at the present time as a result of rising temperature. But at the same time, we have land which will be viable as agriculture at the present time will change into desert in that respect because we have extreme weather taking place. We may have extreme temperature in the summertime or extreme cold in the wintertime taking place. And this is going to happen as the balance change within the atmosphere. Uh, Impact in the business, it depends on the type of business we're talking about, from small business to medium size to large businesses. It depends on the location of the businesses. It depends on the product and so on. We'll come to that in a minute. So the frequency and severity of extreme weather event that will impact many countries actually. We have countries such as Bangladesh will disappear from the map. We already, I don't know whether if you have seen some of the program on BBC a year ago and so on, some farmer talking with the presenter of the program, they will point out they used to have all this land disappeared by the sea now. They used to farm that big land, but now the sea be taken over. Now, when it happened, things like this, country disappearing step by step, actually, it going to cause chaos actually because people need to migrate somewhere else or to search for food, or maybe it may cause obviously some kind of war taking place as the temperature rise and more land disappear, and as well as the agriculture part, particularly which when most affected actually in underdeveloped country with Southeast Asia and some part of Europe as well. We'll come to that again. I'll explain later on. And so we're talking about here, it's going to be direct or indirect impact on the business. The direct one, obviously, we're talking physical damage and a flood or bushfire or forced closure for the businesses. Now, if you are, if your business maybe you have, let's talking about agricultural land close to the sea, as we mentioned earlier on, these particular land would disappear, or maybe because of the extreme weather, it will not be viable for agriculture. The indirect climate change or extreme event may impact on the supply chain. Now, most businesses depend on the supply chain, whether we're talking about supply chain locally or nationally or international scale. That will have an impact and cause disruption by the extreme weather, and business income will be reduced accordingly. I mean, we're talking about it at the present time, which we don't see maybe direct impact on this supply chain, but we're talking about the temperature constantly to rise and the extreme weather take over in the future. That will affect the disruption within from one country to another country, and particularly the supply chain for businesses. Uh, we also have impact on the staff, for example, ability to travel to work. I mean, if we have extreme weather, many of the staff may not be able to travel from one area to another. We also have, if we have extreme weather, extreme temperature, sickness will take place. And we're talking about how new viruses will appear, which I'll come back in a minute as well. And that create a new, I mean, we have the COVID-19. Many scientists believe that caused as a result of the change in the climate. A rising temperature, obviously, viruses can change immediately and adapt to the new environment, and our immune system will not be aware of it and to fight it back. So, which can lead to lost business and reputation, to damage, and so on for businesses. If I go back, the businesses, as the slide mentioned in front of you. Okay, your business is unique, as I mentioned, in its location, operation, and supply chain, and a planning actually for climate change, how to protect business. Insurance obviously will going to rise as a result of expectation that climate change will have impact on the physical part or your business. If you have insured your building or you insure certain aspect, that will rise as part of the rising cost. A plan by identifying the climate risk to your business sector and location. Location are important, and we talked about earlier on, they're going to be winner and loser, but this is on the first stages of a climate change. Winner is going to be as the climate change and temperature rise, certain area will be much more viable and other area will not be viable, which used to be viable for that. So how do you look actually and look after a business when it comes, for example, to climate? Okay, the first aspect for that, if your business is protected by insurance, obviously, the advice that insurance over a long term will be better than, for example, on a yearly basis. And that's simply because the change in the prices for the insurance as the climate accelerate, they're going to change the prices to cover your business as a result of that. That's one aspect. The other aspect is the location for it. Where is your business located? If your business mostly located in an area close to the sea, obviously that's at risk because the sea level will rise as the North Pole and the South Pole will melt, and therefore many part of the northeast of England and the south of England will be at risk of flood actually for that. So the changes of location is an important factor to protect your business. Other aspect as well, we talk a major impact of climate change on agriculture, forestry, fishing sector as well. Now, the fishing sector is an important part, and when the percentage of carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere, a large percentage of carbon dioxide will be dissolved into the ocean. At the same time, the temperature of the water will rise as it absorbs the heat, and the water expands. When the carbon dioxide dissolve into the ocean, it would change the biochemistry of the ocean. It become acidic. It means more species into the water will die out as they will not be to adapt to the new biochemistry in the water and the changes of the temperature as well. So we're talking about microorganisms, but we're talking also fish, and we're talking as well as species with a shell. If the ocean become acidic, obviously the shell will be melt, for this animal will protect it from eating by other animals. But the most important thing is the microorganism. The microorganism at the bottom of the evolution, if they die out, these another level depend on it as well. They will die out as well, and so on. It's like a pack of cards. If you move one pack of cards, and then the whole thing will collapse as a result of this. So, sector of business risk as well as a result of climate change, it has to be adapted on stages actually as the weather change year by year. I mean, in the 70 or in the even as not far away as the year 2000, scientists believe that the changes will take place over maybe many hundred years or even 1,000 years. But now they start changing their mind that the climate change is going to be happening much faster than they predicted in the past. Okay, retail trade, tourism, and various manufacturing sector. If you're talking about medium-sized businesses here, uh, tourism, obviously, many countries depend on tourism. Many companies depend on tourism, and that will be affected as a result of climate change. Retail trade as well. Retail trade, what are we talking about? Retail trade in an area where tourism is, or what are we talking about? Retail trade in the high street, actually, for that. That will have impact as well. The manufacturing process connected to these, to retail trade, to tourism, and other aspects. But if these suffer, the manufacturing process as well will be impacted on it as well. Small-sized businesses, extreme weather event due to increasing frequency and severity of weather event, drought, bushfire, a flood, and so on. These they should have their own planning for that, and the planning obviously depend on how you're going to predict what will happen in the area where your business is located. And I mentioned earlier on, location is very important, particularly if you're talking about United Kingdom for that. Uh, and if the rising level of the sea, it means the land actually United Kingdom becomes smaller, taking large part of the land as a result of the sea rising, i.e., melting the North Pole and the South Pole as a rise of the temperature. There are issues actually how to minimize the impact of climate change, but these factor connected to the business, it has to be put in a plan actually for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years, depend on the type of the business and how the business actually following a regulation. We have a number of regulation now at the present time in minimizing emission of greenhouse gases, and there are taxes actually by the government on these emission of greenhouse gases. I think the last couple of slides of this, I will mention them to you. Okay, we mentioned that south of England and the northeast of England will have many floods taking place in this area, as many scientists predicted that will take place much more actually in the future than what's happening at the present time. Existing protection measure at a community or site level. You may have presently some kind of protection taking place within the community or maybe at the site level, i.e., building much more protection against the sea, for example, not to take additional land for that. Whether that can be done on a temporary scale or a permanent scale, that's another thing to think about. Regulation by the government is an important part when it comes land being taken out by the sea, and how the support actually from the government are provided for businesses in relation to this. Managing flood risk in some area can be possible. We have done that. We have seen that in the past year when the flood taking place. But we're talking about the future. What we have at the present time of flood is not comparison with the flood will taking place in the future. Will be much more major flood taking place that possibly it may not be possible to manage it as we're managing it at the present time. Other area risks are expected to rise, and managing it may not be possible, as I mentioned already. Authority may not be able to manage climate risk on your business behalf. So you have to have your own plan, and you cannot depend actually directly on the government to protect you from certain aspects. You are responsible for your business, and you're responsible as well for the protection of your business. And this only happen through planning, actually, what might happen actually in the near future. In addition to severe flooding, coastal erosion, another major issue, as it will lead to loss of coastal businesses and related infrastructure, which I mentioned earlier on for that. Location depending on the culture value that attract tourism, I mentioned that earlier on, that will be affected. As well, infrastructure will be impacted, such as power and communication. Communication line will be affected directly as a severe weather. We will have a superstorm would happen that will impact on the communication line as well as on power supply for it. Energy cost will increase for that because we will have extreme weather taking place, extreme weather in the summer, much hotter summer, and extreme winter, and therefore we need more energy for that. And that will obviously increase the prices. And as a result, it will accelerate inflation uh, for that. And if inflation taking place, because some of the product, when we're talking agricultural product or food product, not available or be less available, then inflation will take place and the cost will go higher actually for people in general. And that also may cause trouble actually, one from within the nation itself or between nation actually when it comes these impact on the agriculture issue and the food supply. Water of this is another important part. We mentioned water actually, uh, high concentration of carbon dioxide, and I mentioned that the ocean will absorb large percentage of water, and that will impact on the species in the water, but also water which in a river if we're talking about or lake for that, it will have another impact on it. Now we have a good example in Serbia. We have a frozen lake in the past. And now these, because in the summertime, the temperature rise in Russia, and you could see actually bubbling taking place coming out from these lake. Now these bubbling gases are methane, and methane is much more dangerous actually than carbon dioxide. It's much heavier gas for that. And it used to be in that area is a forest actually, and the decaying of the forest, obviously, it will release this kind of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And when the temperature rise, oh, a large area where there's an ice to be, this ice will be melt. And if there are some kind of plantation in the past underneath this ice, the decay, it means more methane will come out into the atmosphere and stay in the atmosphere and trap more heat around the earth. Um, some of the company actually, the risk to water intense industry, those industry provide drink, for example, water supply is going to be affected. And obviously the process of obtaining of this water may rise, cause a rise of costs for this industry or the difficulty actually obtaining the water for them. Water restriction, we may remember in 1976, we have a drought in the summer and the government imposed a water restriction, not to water your garden, not to do that, and so on. That will happen in the future as well. We may have in the summer extreme weather where water restriction be imposed on domestic and company use as a result of not enough rain actually falling in the UK. So on the global level, we're talking about this is we may not think that the global level may have impact on us, but actually it has a direct impact on the UK as well. So the impact of climate change in other parts of the world will impact UK businesses, international supply chain, disruption network, and global market. Weather-related disruptions such as supply chain and disruption of network will impact in vulnerable countries, South and Southeast Asia. So the impact on us actually, even if we consider presumed United Kingdom will not have an impact of climate change, which is not the case, the impact on other countries, especially in Southeast Asia, will have impact on the businesses in the United Kingdom for that. Now, climate change and government role, we're talking about support and facilitating the business sector in the form of awareness program. And we used to give actually presentation to children about climate change and program from one school to another, which is important for the new generation to be aware about what's going to happen in the future when it comes to climate change. But also awareness programs should be provided to community and other part of society and as well to businesses. So support and facilitating business sector in the form of awareness program policy, the policy that will minimize the impact of climate change global warming or minimizing the emission of greenhouse gases. Information sharing, that's an important, what we're doing just now, we're sharing information about climate change, which is an important part. Regulation and how business should adapt to climate change, that should come from government as well to support businesses and to provide a program similar to what we're doing at the present time. Okay, so this, we talk briefly actually about businesses. Let's just talk what's going to happen now if in the future uh, as a result of climate change. We're talking of frequent heat waves and water shortages taking place. And we mentioned sea level rise. The sea level rise will take place as well, which means population displacement. The sea level rise, we already know at the present time, large number of small islands in the ocean already disappeared, covered by water as a result of rising temperature and melting from the North Pole and the South Pole. Property losses that regularly are going to take place, more frequent large-scale damage caused by storm. And these storms will become much bigger. We call it superstorm, super flooding, and wildfire. And you may remember within the last few years, the wildfire in Europe and other parts of the world. I mean, they did not expect it that year after year, every summer coming, we see wildfire taking place in many different countries in Europe. That never happened before in the past, 50 years ago or 60 years ago, but it's happening now. It's going to happen more often every year. Farm, forest, and fishery will be less productive as a result of changes of biochemistry in the water, dissolving carbon dioxide into the water. Species extinction, and we already know a large number of microorganisms have disappeared, and more species will be extinct in the future. Spread of infectious disease, and I mentioned earlier on, one of the lowest species is the viruses. Viruses can adapt to the new climate immediately by changing their DNA, which it means that our body will not be able to be familiar with the new virus take place. For example, the flu jab, you have a flu jab every year. And the reason you have a flu jab every year, because the flu virus is change. And therefore need to have a different kind of vaccination. Now, when the temperature rises, the viruses can change as well. It means a new disease will appear, and our body, our immune system, the white cell and other part of the immune system will not be familiar with it. And by the time, for example, we talked about COVID-19, it took time actually before they managed scientists to find immunization against it. So spread of disease is going to happen on a much larger scale as a result of rising temperature. We also have heart and respiratory problem, especially for people suffering from asthma, for example, or older people, which means the concentration of ground level ozone, and that obviously it has impact, particularly for people living in the city. People living in the countryside has less impact on them compared with people living in the city. As we mentioned, the transportation section emit 26% actually of greenhouse gases. Okay, the question is climate change and global warming unstoppable? We cannot do much about it. The climate change and global warming will not be possible to stop and cannot be avoided. And this is what the IPCC is saying, actually, in their website. Society can respond to climate change by adapting to its impact and by reducing greenhouse gases emission mitigation, thereby reducing the rate and magnitude of change for that. So what can do about it? Better energy efficiency. large part of our energy actually is being wasted into the atmosphere, transporting, for example, uh, from point A, from power station to the area where you're going to use the electricity, a large part through the cable escape into the atmosphere. So we need to have certain kind of connection. We may be using nanotechnology approach in order to minimize that kind of waste taking place. We also have other aspects, for example, transportation, unnecessary transportation, using a car, single people using car, and instead of sharing car for that. We also have the problem that um, leaving light, for example, now we have in Coventry, now we have in our campus that the light go off by itself, and many companies are doing that. So if nobody uses the light, it go off by itself, which is a good approach actually in this respect. But any aspect, particularly when you have luxury cars where they use a huge amount of petrol, which emit greenhouse gases. You have a video on it, you have a fridge in it, and so on. I remember I was filling my car, my small car, some time ago, which cost me maybe £50. And if somebody in front of me, another car, a luxury car, it took about £300 to fill the tank. A Mercedes car, something like that. Now, these cars, obviously, they emit far more luxury car greenhouse gas into the atmosphere as a result of using a large amount of fossil fuel. Now, we have also global involvement. Um, Before that, we're talking about renewable energy production. We should move to renewable energy. Renewable energy is sustainable and do not emit actually greenhouse gases as long as the manufacturing process of the hardware using renewable energy, not fossil fuel for that. Um, Renewable energy is part of the solution, not the full solution. Uh, Obviously, we have government grant, government support to support businesses in turning into renewable energy to get their energy and electricity rather than using fossil fuel. We also have a global involvement. It means countries around the world should cooperate with each other for that matter and impose actually certain regulation. We have the United Nations, even though United Nations is a weak organization, but still it can play a major role for that. Implementation of carbon capture storage. Now we can take actually carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it under the sea, for example, it become into liquid. That's the technology already available for us, and that can reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. There are many different methods for that, but we don't have the space to talk about it here. Okay, what about renewable energy? Renewable energy can be part of the answer, but not the full answer. We have different uh, type of renewable energy. We have actually a presentation in the future. We talk about renewable energy in detail. So we have biomass energy, solar energy, wind power, geothermal power, hydropower, ocean thermal power. All this actually can use, and they are sustainable. Each country can they have their own energy. They don't have to depend on another country. Sun everywhere, wind everywhere, water everywhere. So they cannot depend on another country to get their energy. They become independent, they are sustainable, and do not pollute the environment. What about nuclear power instead of fossil fuel? Because nuclear power being talked about, it doesn't emit greenhouse gases. So why not use a nuclear power? Well, the technology improved recently. In the past, for nuclear power, for example, 90% radioactive waste, 10% being used to generate electricity. The technology improved further. Now we have 90% being used from the uranium to generate electricity and 10% waste. And this 10% waste, it can be recycled as well and use energy. The problem actually with the nuclear power is the radioactive waste. Where are you going to dump this radioactive waste? And that can stay for 10,000 years, which can cause cancer, actually, buried somewhere inside the earth in different countries around the world. Uh, but not also that, but cost of the building nuclear power station and also the security issue. The radioactive waste can be used as a dirty bomb, actually, if by some terrorists taking over and so on. And that's a security aspect and important. So this is one of the issues, actually. We have some people supporting the usage of nuclear power as it doesn't emit greenhouse gases. And some people, such as Green Party, they are opposed, actually, the use of nuclear power. So we may end up actually the need for a new type of fuel. And the new type of fuel is needed, should meet the following condition. Environmentally friendly, secure and reliable supply, economical, affordable, available on demand, international, national, local, and city, town, and villages, compatible with a wide range of technology, great produce in different form, storage and life cycle long enough, and present future development are possible. We haven't had yet, even though we have biomass, for example, or biofuel, slightly improving all the time, but we aiming actually for a fuel that can meet this condition, and therefore, obviously, a greenhouse gas emission and sustainability approach will take over. Okay. When it comes to the government and UK energy scheme, that's been there for some time now. The first one, actually, 2002, a renewable application scheme, the ROC certificate. That means given actually for power stations or any businesses who are actually using renewable energy, they can claim back money from the government for that if they are using renewable energy supply. And this is a trade. The ROC certificate can be traded on the market as supported by the government. I'm going to speak to you very briefly about it because I think we may be running out of time now. Then we had the feed-in tariff scheme came in 2010, and that supports small to medium-sized businesses as well. Certain renewable energy used within the system. And then the last one, in 2011, renewable heat incentive came in 2011. This is for any businesses or company who are using actually to heat their building using renewable energy resources, and they can claim benefit refund for that. If you put, for example, for individual, if you put a solar panel on your roof, it depends who's in government, whether we're talking conservative or labor and so on, because the prices changes. You may eligible up to 50% to claim back from the government of the cost of putting a solar panel, for example, to get part of your electricity from renewable energy. Also, I mean, if you get extra electricity, you can sell back to the main power station for that. We also have other government measure. These government measure related to taxes, actually, on using fossil fuel. And again, I want to read it very quickly. The climate change levy for that, improving your business energy efficiency. These regulations by the government to make sure that if you are using fossil fuel, obviously the taxation will be higher. Your business may be already paying for it as part of your bill. You can reduce this payment via the use of renewable energy. And we have also climate change agreement. And these for energy intensive business, you may be eligible for reduction in climate change levy by meeting energy reduction target. And then we have another one by the government, emission trading and reporting. Energy intensive business covered by the scheme must report and meet target to reduce your business greenhouse gas emission or take part in voluntary reporting scheme. Okay, I'm going to conclude that, and then I'll give you a chance to ask a question. So climate change and global warming is real, even though there's a minor disagreement among scientists, but all of them, they agree that the climate change and global warming is happening. Scientists are still disagreement on the actual causes. So we're talking about a minority of scientists. If we're talking about 100 scientists, they say climate change caused by this. 10% of them, they say is not caused by the burning of the fossil fuel. So it's minor, but on the official line is by the government agreed that the causes of climate change taking place as a result of burning fossil fuel. Business should plan, adapt to climate change in advance rather than during, where what's happening to their businesses as a result of flood, as a result of obviously rising prices and so on. Reducing greenhouse gas emission is an important part in minimizing the impact on climate change from the climate change. And renewable energy can be part of the solution, but not the full solution. Individual, local, national, and international support and cooperation are vital. And this is the most important part, actually, that is no point, actually, one country, several countries accept to minimize their greenhouse gas emission, and then one other country emitting a large amount of greenhouse gases. It's just like trying to filling a bucket with a hole in it. It doesn't make sense. So when we have the Kyoto Agreement, we have the Paris Agreement, on that certain country refuse actually to accept for that, to implement the agreement for it. The last part, actually, we have the agreement. All countries agree, actually, on minimizing the emission of greenhouse gases. Okay, if you have any question, please do so. I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, I can't hear you, actually.
Thank you very much, Najib. Lovely. Can you take the slides down, and then we'll
Yeah,
see.
okay, I'll take them.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if we have any questions, do I see any little yellow hands? Mark Jenkinson.
Thanks. I was kind of waiting for other people, but thanks to Najib, and I guess it's a very sobering start to the week. I guess the kind of question is, in your experience, are people and businesses actually taking this seriously? And what action are businesses taking that you've seen? And you mentioned awareness. How do we actually, today was good, but how do we actually spread the awareness across the community?
Okay, I'll start with the last part of the question. Awareness, how do we start the awareness in the community? It should happen actually on a regular basis from time to time. If we're talking about businesses, how they're going to provide this kind of awareness program to their staff. Whether we're talking about a trained person within the staff who knows and understands the climate change or attended training actually in this respect, should provide this kind of presentation. If they don't have in the business anybody who aware of the climate change and the causes of climate change, obviously they could ask someone from another company or another university to come and present these things. So some of these I did before it was a voluntary, actually. I went from one school to another school to present these because I think the younger the generation, the better actually the outcome. You tell them what's going to happen. In our lifetime, the climate change may not be so impact, but the future generation will have much major impact, and therefore we should talk to our children actually about it and what they should do about it to prepare them actually for that and to advise them how to use the type of energy which not emitting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Sorry, can you remind me the other part of the question for that? You mentioned
just your experience of what people and businesses are doing to actually act upon it. And I guess it would be interesting to hear from people on the call what they are doing.
What people are doing in order to minimize,
yes,
climate change.
Are people, in your experience, are people taking this seriously, and are they doing something?
Yeah. That's a good question, actually. Many people actually I talked to before. There's some people not taken seriously. If people taken seriously, we wouldn't be in that state actually for that. Many people I talk to, they are not aware of it actually. What climate change? Do you remember what Trump, when he was a president, he came out and he stood near a piece of ice. Where is the climate change? Look at the ice here. People like him do not understand this kind of taking place, happening as a climate change. He's a businessman, and therefore he was not thinking about impacting his business as a result of regulation or taxes for emitting greenhouse gases. So we don't want somebody coming as a president, for example, who doesn't believe actually that climate change not happening. The climate change happening already. The scientists, all of them agree that the climate change taking place is going to have impact on our lifetime. So that's what I'm talking about. Awareness programs are important because still large percentage of people around the world, they're not aware of it actually for that. And therefore, this awareness program is vital actually to talk to people about it.
Thank you very much, Najib. We're running out of time a little bit, so I'm going to ask, I can see two questions. I'm going to ask Stacey Smith first. Stacey.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the Thames flooding, especially as we're the wrong side of the Thames barrier here in our office. It would also be great to share the slides so that we can follow up on what might be available.
We're doing that. Fret not.
Excellent, thank you. And just one quick comment as well. One of the things we can do as individuals with the most influence is to look at our pensions and our banks, because that's the people who are funding fossil fuels. And we need to change. And we need to change it for our companies and our company pensions and our company banking. But yeah, if you could talk about flooding in London, especially the wrong side of the barrier, that would be really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah. The flood, I mean, this is scientists believe that the flood south of England is going to take place on a much more regular basis for that. And the flood, as I mentioned during the lecture time, in the future one, if the temperature continue to rise, the flood will not be manageable as used to happen at the present time for that. Now, what area is going to take? I mean, it depends how the speed of the rising temperature taking place in the future. What the government should do about it, I mean, they were talking about building additional dam and additional area to prevent that. Now, if the sea level going to go much higher than these, what they try to protect the coast, the erosion of the coast from these sea level, obviously it may not be a solution on the long term. It could be a solution in the short term, yes, taking place, but on the long term, if the sea level going to continue rise and rise and rise, obviously these land will eventually be taken over. What's the solution for it? Well, we don't know at the present time, because we don't know how much water going to come to cover this part of the land. The best way actually in dealing with it is to plan for the future and to take different scenario, different possibility for it. We've taken from the extreme possibility up to the lowest possibility, and each one should have a plan for it, what they should do to do with it in the future before it happened. Scenario, we're talking about the south of England, okay, for that. If we are thinking that the sea level going to be, let's say, 1 meter high, and it's quite high actually for that, which part of the land actually need to be protected and which one is not possible to be protected. So you could check actually the area of land which can be done. If it's more than that, obviously that's a different issue for it. If it's on a smaller scale, yes, I mean, building certain area to protect the land, it can be possible and it can be done for that. But again, it depends on politics as well. It depends who's in the government, and it depends how much money available actually to invest in this area for that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take one last question. Cecile.
Yes, I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. I think I'm thinking, initiatives such as, the 15-minute city. I know it's been like big scandal here, but, could you think of any other initiative, even taken by small businesses, that maybe have changed the way some businesses are run? I think things like Greener Greenwich, and I think the work they do at Greenwich is actually really good, because you can see a lot of small businesses being much more aware of issues around sustainability. But can you think of other examples where you've seen businesses, especially small, medium, that, come together and made an impact in their communities when it comes to being more sustainable?
Yeah, we have a lecture actually on sustainability, and as I mentioned earlier on 20 May, we will cover that in the coming lecture on the 20th of May. But I could answer your question. Small businesses, obviously, the best approach for a small business to cooperate with each other, actually, when it comes to issue to climate change and global warming, but as well as a sustainability approach for that. How do you become a business sustainable? As I said, this is a different subject here, but I still give you the answer for it. Sustainability, it means using renewable energy. Okay, renewable energy are sustainable, which is a large part of any business. You need the use of energy for it. Sustainability as well, you need to recycle your material. It means you become member of ISO 14001, and that this membership to provide you with the detail how to actually to become sustainable, as well how to make your business profitable in the process. we have actually the process now where we recycle the waste, but many businesses still not doing so actually for that. So recycling the waste, it can be resources of material which can benefit the business later on. We also, when it comes, for example, traveling for the staff, for businesses, they use, we're talking about electric vehicle. If they're going to use electric vehicle, as long as the supply of electricity in charging the battery come from renewable energy, then obviously it will not emit greenhouse gases for that. Sharing car, as I mentioned earlier on as well, is an important part. And instead of using each individual, one person driving one car. I mean, we did that when I was at Dante, for example. We used to share one car because 5 of us as a lecturer, we were not living far away from each other. And instead of using 5 cars coming from one place to another, emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, we share one car. And obviously the person who's using his car, he will not pay for the fuel because we're using his car for that. So sharing car or using public transports, because public transport now, we have in London, for example, the buses, they don't use fossil fuel for that. And that would reduce actually greenhouse gases emission. Also, using material, sustainable material coming from imported from other countries, you only use material which do not impact on the environment and do not actually impact on the climate, i.e., the manufacturing process and the mining process being taken place, and with not using fossil fuel. And the process, as well as not damaging the environment. You encourage actually a product produced on a sustainability approach or recycle rather than a product being used to manufacture using fossil fuel for that.
Thank you so much. I just like to, I'm very conscious that time is marching on and we're literally in borrowed time now. And this is the first, and there'll be many more webinars coming up, and we're hoping some in-person events as well with Coventry in over the summer. I'm going to give one very, very quick plug. We will be to our upcoming events, because this is something everyone can get started on Wednesday and learn something, and then you can do it, because our webinar this Wednesday, the 10th, is how to manage your investment in marketing with Clive Reffell. That's really good. I've seen this webinar before. It's excellent. So we can all book into that we can book it today for Wednesday, and that's something you can do immediately, but we're all going to do our bit to help the climate. I would just like to thank Najib for giving us such a lovely and such an interesting talk. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Everything will be coming out later today, and all our other forthcoming events. So I look for, I can see all the little claps. Sorry, I thought they were little hands. So we're all doing little claps. Okay. Thanks again, Najib. See you all soon. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.